Hello. How's everybody doing? How's everybody been? How's everybody been practicing these sort of things through your lives and to your mentalities? I know typically individuals don't realistically have a good approach to things that they don't have good knowledge on, or they just have a general idea on. And because of that, realistically, determines the results and the amount of what's the word action that they're going to take for these sort of works and virtues and other things that fall under, obviously you have some sort of drive, right? You have some sort of motivation and goals that you try to meet and do other types of things like that, right? Which is pretty just normal. And we already have plenty of things in this society without the spiritual side of things to be able to teach us how these things actually are. But so yeah, that's basically the overall premise and the principle, is that your overall approach to these sort of things themselves is the main reasons as to why that's just the main issue. Sadly, you have this very lukewarm approach when you actually do walk towards these sort of goals, and you have certain things in mind and you just aren't actually able to do the things that you actually want to do. You're not actually able to see the results that you want to see. All of it, having to deal with your own naivety, and because you're overall just naive, ignorant, lazy, and pretentious, proud, as well as not being able to acknowledge the real point of self-denial and why you aren't actually able to deny yourselves when it comes to obeying Christ and really living out those sort of commandments for your lives. That way you actually are able to recognize and know what God's heart actually is, instead of you just looking at these things from a legalistic perspective or just from a knowledgeable perspective, or even from a child perspective, right? You're just like, wow, I have to do this and I have to do that. I have to listen to Jesus Christ as if he was my parent, and I have to do certain things like that. And you have no real, foreknowledge as to why he's actually saying these things. But, when you do have kids, or even if you actually reach that point, or you reach that level of knowledge that I actually am talking about in this video, before you have kids, it'll teach you that much more, for you to be able to understand that he does everything in your life for a specific purpose, to be able to grow and mature you. I mean, this is pretty basic and simple, especially if you already have children of your own. Just like, well, yeah, everything that I do is centered around making my kids be mature, grow, and wise, and do certain things like that are just virtuous. Obviously, you want the best for your children because of your children, right? I mean, these are pretty basic principles to be able to understand, but because they're so basic, it goes over individuals' heads, and they just overcomplicate these sort of things for their lives. And they really, it's like they have common knowledge, or, that Christ obviously is this father figure to them, but they don't realistically equate it to the things that they need to equated. So and because of it, they begin struggling, they begin doing this, and obviously you know where I'm going with this, with the struggling part of it. They don't realistically recognize that because they are children of Jesus Christ, the struggle word is not really something that should be in their vocabulary, because they could overcome any of these ailments and infirmities and struggles that these individuals claim to have, but because they're very lazy, and because they want to remain in this sin, because they have some sort of pleasure or gratification from these practices themselves, they continue using the struggle word as a crutch. They're kind of addicted to some of these habits and behaviors, and because of it, they're not readily able to let it go. More or less, individuals, just because of how individuals think, they already know that for certain that the types of actions that they're already committing on a regular basis are going to get them in trouble. And if they don't actually acknowledge the fact that these consequences are severe and real, then it's that much worse, right? And if they just played them, it's like, well, it's like in an attempt to pacify Christ from realistically really hitting you, or really, putting the hammer down in your life when you actually are falling into these sins. What do? You're just like, well, I'll just acknowledge how bad it is, and I'll be like, well, I'm this wretch, I'm this type of individual that, I'm a sinner saved by grace through faith, who's, I can't do a single, you start throwing these sort of words around. But Christ is actually able to see through all of these, things themselves, and you realistically really need to really think ahead that there's going to come a time in your life where Christ will definitely stop being so polite, right? And he's gonna just tell you these certain things to your face, and just tell you to knock it off or you're going to die. Plain and simple. He's done it plenty of times before, and plenty of, in plenty forms before in your life, and you would just completely dismiss them. And you're just like, well, that was way too harsh. That couldn't have been Christ. And you completely just rejected that whole, concept of Christ actually telling you to get right with him, even though it's just, playing it safe, and you just didn't want to actually do that. And the consequences were very extremely severe, and you were just like, well, no, I know God is love. And you start throwing other just things that realistically have no real, what's the word? It's like, well, yes, God is love. In that current situation, in that circumstance that you're in right now, you're obviously frustrating a holy God, and that's not realistically something that you need to really be so dependent on and using as a crutch to get you out of the trouble that you actually have gotten yourselves in, which is just common. Every single individual, every human being on the face of this earth always runs and gravitates towards these sort of premises to soften the blow. What did children do? What did I do? I put like 4 or 5, pairs of pants on before my mom was going to beat me. That way, I didn't feel the belt and other things like that, because I knew I was in trouble, and I got in trouble with her. And this is just the same as like premise and principle that you actually are practicing for yourselves with Christ, is that you put so many different means and blockades to be able to stop the blow from Christ. But again, he's your father. He's going to hit you pretty hard, and especially he already knows what you actually have under your pants and under your sweatpants. And obviously he's just going to hit you that much harder for you to realistically really wake up and really recognize who your God actually is. He's not a man. He's not a being that you could obviously cheat or deceive in any means, way, shape, or form. So yeah, repent. But this is video. Alright, so this video obviously is going to be mainly or specifically about that. I'm just going to address all the false shepherds and, pastors that actually are in their churches, because many individuals are just heavily ignorant and naive on how, organized the kingdom of darkness actually is. And whether it's ignorantly or whether they actually are doing it on purpose, the individuals who are, Christians, who actually are shepherding a flock, these individuals obviously are being governed and manipulated through an order and organization of Satan himself. All these things, obviously, because they don't have any real authority or power from God to be able to, stop this plan entirely for the innocent individuals. It just continues going on and on and on through false doctrines, and the more false doctrines that they actually see, the easier it is to be able to get individuals to deceive them. Knowledge and, learning new things is always something that is able to open a lot of doors for demons to come inside of their lives, because of the pride aspect of it. It's really easy to get an individual on this reward system of, constantly giving them all this knowledge, but these individuals are still clueless and blind towards God's perfect plan of salvation. And I would say they actually are. So while they have this reward system and, satisfaction and gratification from learning these sort of, knowledgeable things, they've completely neglected all of the spiritual side of their walk with Christ. And they're learning things, and they're learning new means to be able to put these sort of common and basic principles and to be better understanding of them, and to actually teach other individuals those sort of things themselves. They've completely neglected the weightier issues and the weightier matters, like just what I actually have been talking about, bearing fruits, that the Father is glorified, being the workman on the table, engaging themselves in spiritual warfare, and actually acknowledging the demonic, instead of them just repeatedly just running from darkness and doing all those other things because they're afraid, and they know that they're severe, they're heavily underprepared for every single one of those sort of tactics and tricks of the devil that are coming inside our life, because they already have acknowledged that they're more focused and centered on the theology, quote unquote, false doctrine side of knowledge, side of Christianity, and they have no real means to be able to address these situations. Even with common sense, they still don't put two and two together. But that's from the innocent perspective. From these false shepherds doing it on purpose, they already automatically have an order, and this is just something that God wanted me to actually address, because people are heavily naive and ignorant towards these sort of principles themselves, is the fact that these pastors obviously meet with Satan in the kingdom of darkness in hell, in the spirit realms, and they basically, have this sort of talk with, the higher ups that they have to talk to, and they're basically like, well, what am I going to talk about? It's like, well, yes, I could always talk about the same old things that I've been talking about and do other things like that, and there's not realistically anything that I can do. This is just common knowledge, but as long as we keep them far away from, so this is obviously very cunning and very, intelligent and crafty on the devil's part, is that, they already have accepted the fact that you already know just common basic principles, like you're saved by grace through faith. But the main purpose and the main means of that knowledge is to be able to twist it and distort it. So this is also another misconception that individuals have, is that when automatically anything that has to do with Bible or scriptures and things like that, they think that the devil is going to flee and run away from those sort of things themselves. When one of the first things that the devil has done, and one of the first things he's done in my life, is to twist scripture and to not take Christ as holy as he actually is and as serious as he actually is. And because of that, very basic principle, I was still smoking weed and, fornicating and doing other kinds of things like that. And, just obviously, texting girls and doing all this other stupid stuff. And basically I was at this level, and I was at this, point in my life where I thought that I was serving God, but in all reality, the devil just came inside of my life and just, it's just like, man, it's just so stupid looking back at it, in all honesty, because just like, how in the world could I ever have fallen for those sort of simple tricks? But, again, I'm getting off topic. The main premise and the point of this is for you to be able to acknowledge and to know for certain that this is what is actually happening, and for you to just play it safe, right? And to just think ahead, whether they're doing it or whether they're not doing it on purpose. You need to act as if they actually are doing it on purpose, to be able to preserve your souls and to sanctify yourselves, or don't even bother. You're going to continue being naive and wondering why you have so many problems, right? Right, and that's just one of the main, problems of individuals, just that they're way too naive and they don't think it could happen to them. But so yeah, this is just something that Christ was actually telling me, is that I haven't realistically addressed that, and because I haven't addressed that or really brought it to individuals' attention, that they're heavily naive and ignorant of how organized and the orders that the devils actually have, and all these sort of churches that are doing it on purpose. Is individuals have dropped their guards, and they're just like, well, I don't realistically know what to do in these sort of situations. I'm just heavily lost and confused, and these sort of things and these sort of doctrines come inside of my life, and they charm me, and I get swayed and easily, because they sound good, and everybody in the room is just, applauding these sort of things themselves. First things first, these devils are actually able to toy with your emotions. They're able to actually put certain things inside of your hearts. They're able to counterfeit, these very same feelings and praises that you actually have for the Most High, and all of it is counterfeited to be able to advance and to be able to organize and just to get more of a reaction from you, because you're actually able to discern the fact that other individuals are actually accepting these messages. And your curiosity just peaks, and you're just like, well, what is going on? Is there something that I missed? And you just seem extremely lost. These are manipulation tactics, but everybody's just being manipulated and toyed in these certain, types of churches of Satan that are, quote unquote Christian, when in reality these individuals are actually doing it on purpose or on accident. It still applies, and this is just the very same principles that individuals just fail to recognize, is the fact that devils are actually able to toy and manipulate with other individuals' emotions. It's not just strictly just solely negative emotions like anger, depression, sadness, and other things like that. They could obviously still toy with your emotions from the light side of things, of happiness, joy, satisfaction, pleasure, and other things like that. And that's just how they're actually able to get more individuals to believe these sort of false doctrines in the church and other places and other things like that. So this video is like just trying to expose the kingdom of darkness and how naive you essentially are. I mean, whatever have clicked inside of your head that they will be able to do these sort of things, or that it's possible to counterfeit the very, the kingdom of light principles of hallelujah and other things like that. Oh, obviously you're just like, well, I think God is going to preserve me. He's going to keep me away from these sort of things themselves. You're not even able to acknowledge the fact that they've been manipulating your emotions all of your life. Every single time that you got angry and you felt anger, they were doing the same exact principle that I'm talking about right now, and every time he got happy or or one of those sort of things, you know, when someone actually ended up falling or falling flat on their face, and you're just like, yes, I've been waiting for this. This individual has just been, having this good old life, and finally something bad is going to happen to them. You were just tempted, and then you fell into sin, and that was just the means to be able to get you uh, to cause God's judgment to fall on you, and you get judged for every single one of these emotions that you experience, whether it's your satisfaction of someone else's downfall, or you not actually being able to wish the best for another person, or actually being able to witness and be jealous of another individual's blessings and benefits, and them actually receiving the best while you have absolutely nothing. These are very sad instances and scenarios for many individuals on both sides. For the side of the other person that obviously is experiencing something that is not so fun and not so nice, and then for you to just be able to be rejoicing about those sort of situations. And obviously in Jeremiah 50, Christ or God, rather, both of them, they addressed this, what I just mentioned specifically, how individuals rejoiced at Jerusalem's destruction and knowing that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. And for that very same and basic principle, he ended up destroying all of them who rejoiced over Jerusalem's destruction and future destruction. And so obviously, that implies a lot, in all honesty. That implies the fact that you get judged for every single one of your emotions that you feel for another person, whether good or bad, in a negative manner or in a positive light. And, that's just whatever. Christ is actually able to discern when you actually are happy to finally meet your spouse, and how content and satisfied you are to marry your spouse, as well as the opposite, how disappointed you are in your spouse that, oh, this is the individual I have to marry. And you get judged for every single one of these things. And this is just a part of God's character himself. He can't do a single thing about it. He can't do a single thing about not judging these sort of situations, because it's just the type of person that he actually is. So it's not something that you realistically can hold against him. This is just his person. He's judge, he's God. These sort of situations and scenarios come before his face, and because he is God, he's forced to act on those sort of scenarios, and he has to judge those situations righteously according to everything else that already has happened in your life. Have you received certain bits of knowledge and other tests and trials in your life, and all these things just more or less kind of determine how soft the blows are going to be, but still, he could still hit you pretty hard for absolutely no reason. We could look at Job, and that's the perfect example for us to be able to discern that God does whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and there's not realistically anything that you could do about it. And even then, even afterwards, it's not that Job realistically committed an enormous sin, but at first it was all about him being tempted by Satan, and then towards the end, because of his attitude towards it and his tone, or however, God was just reminding him of very simple and basic things, like, were you there when I created everything? It's like, no, you're just a man. Know your place. Understand that everything that I actually have done for you is for your benefit, and that way you actually are able to really recognize who your creator is, and have this level of faith inside of me to be able to trust me whenever things just don't go as planned. And other things like that. He could have been influenced by his friends and by his wife, and other things that we typically are influenced by. Well, I'm not realistically phased by any of those things themselves. It realistically really has to take a lot, and for me to really be phased by somebody and to let another individual influence me. This is just a virtue and grace that Christ has given me since I was in high school, not to care what another individual has to say or think about me, and to just realistically just be focused on the things that I like, right? Everybody has an opinion. I don't care to know yours, and yours is not going to change mine, and just leave it off on that. But still, people get on this high horse. It's like, nah, man, you really feel like, it's like, listen, dude, I realistically don't care, and just, you need to relax. Opinions are not based on anything but your own personal preferences, and facts and truths are based on the ultimate absolutes, and that's it. And I don't realistically care about anything else about your opinion, how these things make you feel, and other principles and premises like that. This is a very intelligent outlook to be able to have, and that little tactic that I just used right now is another psychological tactic that these pastors actually used on the flock and in congregations is when they actually talk to you. They attempt to make these things sound sweeter. They try to appeal to you, and they try to allure to just something that's typically praiseworthy. It's like keywords or repeating keywords inside of your mind. That way you actually do take the bait and you actually practice these sort of good virtues for your life, whether good or bad, or sins. They cloak these sort of sins as if they're good, or as if this is just a part of your own character. This is just how humans typically are. I'm just a guy, so I gotta watch sports and other things like that, and realistically really neglecting their duties as a disciple of Christ. And that's just something to be looking towards, and to be able to recognize and discern what an individual is trying to allure to you, and trying to get you to attempt to to actually imitate virtues and other things like that. And these things are just it's not that they're sins, but it's more or less how individuals just typically tend to think. And people already have common knowledge on that. They know what they actually are able to, how they're able to manipulate a person through these very same and they're almost like laws considering how everyone always almost falls for them, especially if they're very ignorant towards it. They don't have that level of discernment. But this isn't obviously to get you to fall for the base or things like this. This is obviously to get you to just use common sense, and to just recognize, to think logically, and think like a rational human being, and to just apply these things to your life and do everything that is good because it's good. And automatically anything and everything good, whether it's a characteristic or a quality of someone else or an attribute, it comes from God, or maybe it's a blessing. But by now, obviously, you already have common knowledge that on this page. I'm not going to talk about financial blessings or other things like that. I heavily condemn those sort of talks and sermons when individuals just begin talking about how you're going to get blessed with a Ferrari, or maybe subtle terms, right? God wants to bless you. It's all about blessings. These are flat out lies. These are lies from the enemy. And then when finally these blessings don't actually come inside of your life, or hardships do come, it's like, where are these blessings that you promised me? God, I know that I believe in your word. King David was rich. King Solomon was the richest person on the face of this earth. How dare you, not do these sort of things, and now I don't have enough for the rent, and how could I do this? And you're just, the storm just comes and just completely sweeps this foundation off, and the house is destroyed. But remember what this topic was about. It wasn't about this. It was just about you being able to discern and recognize how organized the kingdom of darkness actually is. And for an individual that actually knows what they're doing it on purpose. They send these sort of demonic entities out in the congregations to be able to deceive and to see who would be more susceptible to their messages, as well as they already have your files whenever they want to see them, and they could just see what kind of sins that you actually typically fall on and fall into, as well as what they actually have been working on in your life, how much they actually have been progressing towards these sort of goals, and that they have destruction and destroying and damnation for you. And this is basically how they're able to direct your steps, because you don't know this, right? You don't know that they actually are able to do this. You just have general knowledge that God's going to protect you from these things themselves, but I can assure you He's not doing this. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions that individuals actually have as a Christians, that they think that God is going to protect them from every single one of these things. What I just mentioned, if God has a case and file for every one of these sins, just like how it's written in Revelations, how the books were opened and everything that individuals have done is already written inside of the books. This is the same exact premise that I'm referring to when talking about God is not the only individual who has access to these books. If you actually pray and you make a good habit and you're consistent towards these sort of things, to ensure that the devil and his agents and his angels don't actually have access towards it, now you're actually showing Christ that you actually care, and He's going to give you some graces to ensure that those sort of things don't happen, that they're actually able to put your things up on file. But for the most part, you haven't realistically worked towards that level at all, or whatsoever. You don't even want to accept the fact that this is what is happening in the kingdom of darkness. And that's just pretty sad, and the devils are going to continue using your file against you, and you're going to be wondering what's wrong with you and all these sort of issues in themselves. But if I had to already address it, which I already did, I already know, man, I didn't want to get into that point either. I was just like, how in the world is God going to allow these sort of things? How in the world is God going to allow these sort of devils to come inside of my life and to allow me to be tempted? I didn't want to believe these temptations were actually demonic. I thought it was all myself and that I was just struggling and I was this horrible wretch. But in all reality, I was just being tempted like Jesus was in the wilderness. And that was just the saddest thing about it, is that I would take responsibility for these sort of sins that I hadn't even committed, and other things like that. But nevertheless, obviously, it was better to be safe than sorry for me. And I was actually, you know what, whether they actually are able to read my files or not, I'm just going to play it safe. I'm just going to pray to Christ to deliver myself from the sort of things that they actually are able to use against me. And sure enough, these sort of presences began leaving me, and that was all the proof that I needed to to see. And it's just like, man, if they actually do have, I forgot how I worded it, but the overall premise of it was that I don't want them to actually see my case on file, and how they're actually able to see all the types of sins that I actually have fallen into. Is my name in the book of the dead, or is it in the book of life? And I was basically, I was really, it's not that I was worrisome or stressing out about that sort of situation. It was just the fact that it was like, man, obviously it's more praiseworthy to play it safe, right? And to just be like, well, whether they are or whether they aren't, I'm just going to be praying to Christ consistently to ensure that the devils aren't actually able to read my case on file, because it should be illegal, right? If you actually are able to do this in our society, to read anyone's case on file of all the sins they actually commit on a regular basis, that just seems like it's extremely illegal. That's not my business. You're struggling with these sort of sins, but to the devils, they don't care. Realistically, anything that'll make their jobs easier, they're going to do it, and even less if you don't actually fight towards it and to stop it. And one of the easiest, well, it's not easiest, one of the most common lies that the secular world always falls into is the fact that they think that God, the creator of all, is going to protect them. Individuals who don't have the Holy Ghost, who aren't even children of God himself, from these demonic temptations inside of their life. And because they actually believe that firmly and with all of their hearts, they think that every single one of these reactions and emotions they experience, because nothing is demonic, because God is supposedly going to protect them, because they have a cross hanging in their car, or whatever the case may be, is automatically them. So hopefully you're able to see through the sneakiness and craftiness of the devil, how he's actually able to really get these individuals to drop their guards, and then boom, he just goes in for the kill. And that's just how he ensures actually able to work in the secular world and in the secular lie. Then individuals just continue, this is why the LGBT agenda is the way that it is, and it's so hard to actually get them to believe these sort of tactics, because they already are suckered into other things. But I'm not even going to mention that, just because I don't want my video to get flagged, and then individuals just like, oh, but you're promoting hate speech. Obviously you love these individuals, right? You don't discriminate, you're not hateful towards them, you don't try to make them feel unwelcome or uneasy towards these sort of situations, for anyone, whether they're black, Chinese, or anything else. That's just the case of the matter, right? Everybody's equal, because we're all part of the human race. But yeah, getting off topic still. The individuals who are in the pulpits, on the podiums, just preaching these sort of abominations and abominable sermons and hearsay and other things like that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty sad in itself. It's just because you don't actually think that they're that intelligent, crafty, and the level of access that they actually have on your life and what they're able to do. There's just so many testimonies and accounts of other individuals that had quote unquote prophets tell them about what they actually have in their their rooms, and where is this and where is that, and all of a sudden you're just like, wow, this individual is a prophet of the Lord. Or maybe just events that actually ended up happening, to them, the individuals automatically give them all of their trust, and they start sowing seeds of $1,000, when in reality the devil is actually able to pull their case on file and tell them these sort of situations because they're always around. They haven't been bound whatsoever. If devils are just walking around, just doing the work of the enemy, then obviously they would know a thing or two about your life and your favorite color and other things like that, or more or less they're able to influence what your favorite color would be, because you're heavily ignorant on the devices of the devil and how they actually are able to stir up your heart and your emotions to be able to get you to like green, or to be able to get you to like baby blue, or to be able to get you to like red or other things like that, right? And you don't even know what's going on, and that's one of the saddest things about it. And yeah, and these prophets just end up making a killing off of other individuals just through these little simple principles. It's basically like spies, or what is it, detective work, FBI, criminal what is those types of individuals called, when it's like, oh, I feel like my husband is cheating on me. It's like, okay, a private investigator, that's what I was trying to think of. This is what these devils actually are. They're private investigators. And so for these prophets, and then they go up to the prophets and they tell them this and tell them that. And they already have been directing your footsteps and try to get you to go inside of that church. And then bam, you're suckered in just because they say that your favorite color was, turquoise. And how are you going to guess turquoise? And it's like, it's so weird. And like, it's like magician, right? Magic work type of stuff. It's like, how are you going to know what card I'm going to pull out? And this is just so weird. What's my favorite number? 33, haha, because of Jesus Christ. That was too easy. Okay, guess again. 1,038, and these devils are just whispering, that number inside of their ear, and because they don't actually know, because they have the full confidence that this church is actually sent from God, they completely have dropped their guards. They don't realistically discern the fact that this is what has just happened. The devil just whispered the number, and then the devil just tells the false prophet that they actually have been talking to in the kingdom of darkness, in the spirit realm, the number they just whispered them. And because they actually have, what is it? What is that saying, when you actually communicate with an individual, person to person communication, devil to person communication, they know them by their real names instead of just spirit of pride and lust. Obviously because of that, they have some level of trust and confidence of one another, because they're a part of the same kingdom. And to them, it's just like, yes, I can see you, Mr. Prophet, and whatever. It's like, I whispered the number 1,038, and the prophet repeats it, and the other individual just like, wow, I can't believe you guessed the number right. And all of it is just planned and orchestrated, which is just something that you need to understand and discern, is that there's just so many other wonders that these demons and false prophets just put inside of other individuals' lives through the same exact principle. It's all of it through directing and just whispering these sort of thoughts to you to actually get you to take the bait. But you realistically don't know how many times it actually ended up failing to get to the point that you actually did finally take the bait of one of the things that they actually ended up saying. And yeah, I mean, you gotta be as wise as serpents, and as shrewd as doves, and as gentle as doves. And that's it, dude, because they're realistically that intelligent. Well, not intelligent. I mean, at face value, these things are extremely, just stupid and ridiculous. But because you don't actually know it, you're just in wonder and in awe. Like, how are they doing these sort of things? Oh, you're a prophet of the Lord. I know it. Through these sort of signs, instead of them actually telling them that they have to be obedient to the law of Moses, that's what makes them a prophet. Do not get it twisted ever. Do not get it mixed up ever at any point whatsoever. No individual is a prophet in our day and age if they don't actually obey the law of Moses. These same exact principles still apply to the new covenant and the new dispensation. And that's it, final. What God said in Deuteronomy about how to be able to discern who is a real prophet and who isn't is by them actually being able to obey the law of Moses. That's the easiest sign. And even if they do obey the law of Moses, God will still put other individuals to be able to test his people and to make sure that they don't actually deviate themselves from God's ways and from God's path. That's the easiest means to be able to discern it. And that's it. But yeah, grace and peace be multiplied to you. The grace is to know what I'm saying, the peace to know that it's sent from God, and the mercy to be able to receive these graces. And the love of the Lord Jesus Christ and the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ reign in your hearts and be with you all. So yeah, basically I just talked about, just the devices of the devil that many individuals are just so ignorant towards, and they're just like, well, wow, what do I do? How are they doing these sort of things? And it's realistically that simple. They have an organization. You don't know that they have an organization, and because of that, that's the real power that they get from. And that's how they get so much more power, is because you're ignorant. If you actually are able to, play it safe and play it cool, it's like, man, are these individuals false prophets? You start noticing these things, as well as paranoia creeps in and other things like that. But, for the most part, once you start giving individuals the benefit of the doubt, you actually are going to be able to discern whether this individual is a shepherd of God or a wolf. And more or less, these individuals are wolves. And I'll just, not waste your time there, because this is just something that I already have discerned. When you actually let God and the Word of God, dictate your life and be able to help you and guide you on what is real and what is sent from God and what isn't, then nothing is going to change your mind. You're not going to give a single person on the face of this earth the benefit of the doubt, because these things are already set in stone according to what is written in the scriptures. But because, individuals are just slick about it, it's like, well, this is just day and age. We have to charge for the Bible, and to, I have this new book coming out, and donate. We're not actually supposed to charge, but you can donate, but you can't even get your hands on it without giving them $30. That's not donation. You're straight up charging them for it. And obviously, other slick manners like that. Is that a sin, or is that not a sin to charge for the gospel, or to charge for anything that you've received from Christ? It's a sin. I mean, these things are pretty, basic and crystal clear. But because of, the overall modernized culture and the culture of Christianity in our day and age about Christianity and concerning what it actually is and means to be a Christian, because every single pastor is doing it, it's fine. All these people are going to hell, and that's should just open your eyes to be able to see, how narrow the path actually is, and that this isn't a game for individuals to be able to discern, to just throw away so casually, like, oh yeah, these things are just simple and easy. I'm praying for a revival, but there's no revival. There's absolutely no revival without obedience to the law of Moses. There's absolutely no revival without any of these basic first century church principles. And obviously, off of that principle alone, you're able to see every single one of these so-called revivals as being completely fake and phony. It's like, well, yes, there's plenty of false counterfeit worship spirits and false praise spirits and counterfeit praise spirits. This is what these individuals have been, in short, been suckered into, and they genuinely believe that they actually are saved because they said hallelujah a couple times, or they're like, I'm finally happy and excited to realistically really accept the gospel and to really accept Christ. I felt so bitter before. These are very low standards for individuals to be able to decide on whether they actually are saved or whether it really is a real revival. And they have it in forms of concerts and other abominations that God would never actually promote or advance, just because of the fact of naivety towards certain individuals and how they are going to receive certain messages. Obviously, God is always going to be a father figure, and protection is always going to be first. Well, obviously, having fun is not a sin. Nobody's disagreeing with you there. There's the overall means on how you actually are attempting to have fun that is a sinful part of it. It's like saying that you can't dance because it's a sin. It's ridiculous. Or you can't, write poetry because it's a sin, or you can't sing because it's a sin. It's just whatever. Sensuality, sexuality, these sort of little stupid things like that are going to be the main means to be able to cause you to compromise little by little. And then next thing you know, what was so obvious before isn't as obvious as it is now. You're getting tatted up. You're dressed skimpier with tighter dresses when you actually go to church and other things like that. They seem very obvious to you before you actually ended up compromising little by little, but boom, like nothing would ended up happening. Now you're dressed like a whore. You're dressed like some sort of cheap skink, and in God's house. I mean, how dare you? And these are very basic principles and to understand, and something that we actually have always been taught as little kids never to do, and yet this is what we actually are seeing on a regular basis. Whether it's a Christian ministry page, quote unquote, or first name, last name ministries, uh, or just some hoochie mama inside of some random Christian church, you know, and that's just pretty sad about it. But I'm just gonna deliver you, and to be able to help you to deliver yourselves as well. Uh, from what you actually are enticed by, and just how they, in short, just uh, use your own emotions against you to be able to stir you up of praises and satisfactions and false worship spirits and counterfeits of praise spirits. That way you are just, avoiding the whole drama entirely, because it's avoidable and it's unnecessary. And yeah, so I'm breaking those curses up because you've cursed yourselves for accepting counterfeit spirits. And that's just pretty simple. You accepted something from the kingdom of darkness ignorantly or on purpose because you wanted to feel something real for God, and you accepted it inside of your life. I've been there also. It's really sad and really, shameful to actually get to that level, and well, something like that, a variation of it. But so yeah, I know what you're going through. And it sucks, but whatever. Just accept the real, and just know that the real is nothing compared to the actual. There's just so much more peace when you actually do accept the real. Praise spirits instead of the counterfeits and other things like that. I spoke about that in my, third testimony to heaven, how he was pissed off at me, or with Christ, how he was mad at me and he told me to go back with his, hands balled up in fists. And that was the reason why, is because I was leaning towards counterfeit spirits and taking the devil's gifts and other things like that, and it was just stupid. And I was trying so hard to actually be able to avoid the drama, but it was just like, I still didn't confront the issue of addressing the spiritual side of it. Temptations, that's not something that I was practicing on a regular basis. I still was taking responsibility for these sort of things and suffering so much for it. And it's just so sad, because I see so many other individuals that were on the same exact path that I was on, and they still are, crying out to God. They're struggling with, their sins, quote unquote, but they're just being tempted. I had to take responsibility for it. Or, if they actually are falling into sin, they don't avoid it entirely and just delete Instagram for a while. Really clear your head for a little bit and saturate yourselves and your minds. That way you just know how to do good and you don't know how to do evil anymore. And realistically, it takes like a couple of weeks, right? But for the most part, you need to do that. These things are serious. You will end up going into hell if you just continue putting these stupid things before your face and before your eyes. That's it. But yeah, the deliverance side of it, because they definitely are using your emotions against you. That's one of the things that I know the most on what the devil's actually doing. That's one of the rarely least talked about things that I talk about in these sort of videos. But for sure, they're going to use your own emotions against you in every single situation, in every single means and way that you actually let them, because you don't tame your emotions. And therefore, because you don't tame your emotions, or you don't have that level of, you don't retain that when you actually are going out in the field and going out, running your errands and doing things like that. You just let your emotions run wild and run free, and next thing you know, Sally pisses you off, and you just start acting out on these impulses and emotions that you actually are experiencing on a regular basis. That is so immature, and that's just something that you need to be able to recognize and discern. There has to be a level of maturity and understanding as a Christian that you're not supposed to react like a little child would, and you're not supposed to do these sort of things that Christ himself has already condemned, and your parents already have condemned since you were a little kid. It's like, Elizabeth, knock it off and start acting like a grown lady, and other things like that. I mean, these things are pretty basic and, simple principles to be able to understand, but you just don't carry them to Christian principles. That Christ is not going to tell you, Elizabeth, you need to knock it off right away because you're making a scene and you're embarrassing me. how many Christians do you think embarrass Christ on a regular basis through, worship, quote unquote, when they aren't even willing to engage in spiritual warfare or fight for children? He's able to see these things if other individuals are able to see these things. And to him, it's so disappointing, for you to not even, put two and two together that other individuals can see these things. And you don't even bother changing. It's just all about, accountability through your own relationship with Christ, and he knows your heart and other things like that. And individuals are calling you out on your garbage and your phoniness. He wants you to focus on, real human aspect side of things, and to have a heart towards things that even the secular world have a heart towards, where the secular world, they're not even Christians or things like that, but they see a homeless individual that have tattered socks and ripped socks, and what do? They run and buy them a whole pack. I'm talking about like $15 pack of 12 socks, and you're just over there just, well, whatever, I got this one pair here, and this is just what I'm gonna get you, little friend, and thank you. I'm glad to be doing God's work. It's like you need to knock it off, and you just need to cut it out immediately, because people have called other individuals out on it, and they definitely will call you out on it as well. And Christ, obviously, because he's polite, he's not going to do it. But eventually, when you frustrate him to that point, he will do it if he does love you, because he's rebuking you. So therefore, be zealous and repent. So yeah, I'm just delivering your emotions, just because he always manipulate Christians through their emotions, and because these Christians think and they firmly believe that Christ is going to protect them from, spiritual warfare and temptations, and therefore every single one of their emotions and anything they feel is according to them and not temptations and demonic. They just let the door wide open to be manipulated and run down by these devils, because they don't believe it's happening to them in that current day and age. So hopefully, you gain that level of discernment, as well as to be able to recognize the real state of your soul, and how, much of a gullible, naive Christian you essentially were. You've just been acting like every other Christian that has ever existed on the face of this earth of all time. And it's just pretty sad, because when Worley was talking about it, right, how he's like, Christians are, just gullible, and they just believe anything and everything, and then whatever they actually do know, they don't apply it to Christian principles. And it's just so sad that they make these things in legalistic terms, and it's just like, well, I have to wait to do this, when in reality, do you have to wait up to go to work? No. I mean, you obviously know that you have a job from Monday through Friday, and you have to go every single day, and yet here you are waiting every single day for a phone call, and these sort of things in themselves, and it's just sad, and it's just so terrible for individuals to just continue living this way of thinking now, expecting God to actually tell them every single thing that they need to be doing, when in reality they need to be asking God and Christ what they should be doing today, and what their work for them is, and to be actively seeking the Lord out for these sort of things every single day and consistently. That's just something that you cannot refute. What is it? You cannot afford, you cannot afford to neglect or equate that you need to be doing that on a regular basis, because of the fact that you will end up burning in the lake of fire, because you're not under the very basic principle of you being a servant of the Lord. But I know in this video I'm mentioning a lot about just basic, and this is just so easy and simple. These are very simple principles to be able to understand. The fact that your pastors don't actually teach you this sort of things is, something else, because they're more focused on, the knowledge side of things that puff you up, instead of realistically really grounding you and getting you centered in the gospel and the things that Christ actually wants you to do, work and other things like that. And you overcomplicate these things, and you think that you actually are pleasing Christ because you know a thing or two, but you realistically don't know a single thing. From your perspective, and this is just from a man's perspective, this isn't even God who's all-knowing. What would you prefer to actually have as an individual to serve you? Someone who's just talking about grace all the time, or someone who actually is asking you and wants to know more on the things that they need to be doing, because they already have been doing everything that you actually have told them to do? Obviously the second one. This is just so common sense, but people don't even put that piece of the puzzle, or put that little part of the equation or formula into their formula or whatever, into their math equation. And to them, they think they actually are pleasing Christ. When in reality, you already have confessed and known for certain that within yourself, you're convicted how foolish and how irrational you've just been as a Christian. And it's just so sad and so disappointing for many individuals who want to continue, attempting to please Christ, and all of them are doing it in their own way and in their own form. Because it's not to say that that's all that they have, but for sure, they're so legalistic and they don't realistically apply common sense to the things that they need to be applying common sense to. And these things are just pretty basic and simple. And when I put it in terms like that, or when I just put it in terms of you actually thinking from the secular world perspective, just say, well, I need to get up to go to work, and that's essentially it. And that's the same exact principle that you need to live by. If you don't believe my words, you will be rebuked. So, and just believe these words, or it's going to make it that much more difficult to deliver yourselves when the time comes. So just start doing it now. I'm doing it now also to get rid of all those nasty devils that are inside of your emotions, because that's the only reason why they're there. They're set up as traps, just like when you set traps to get animals in the wilderness, and coyotes and bears and other things like that. This is just what they actually are doing to you. You're getting trapped every single time through your emotions. How many times have you, as a Christian, wanted to actually practice out one of Christ's commandments in a certain scenario or circumstance that popped up in your life and you weren't able to? It's like, come on. I mean, really, it's like these individuals are just toying with you, these demons are just toying with you and your emotions and your feelings, and that's the easiest means to be able to get you to not deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow Christ, is through pride. And it's just so sad. And I'm saying sad because it's more or less just pity, It's just pitying an individual who doesn't realize and recognize that they're actually being manipulated and toyed with. And even though you actually repeatedly tell them on a regular basis and consistently how it's not to demean them or belittle them or to try to make them feel stupid. It's just very basic, principles. It's like, I know what's going on, I know what's happening. You're being manipulated and toyed with. That's it. Don't overreact. Don't make an enormous deal out of it. Just hold yourselves accountable for what you actually are accountable for. Don't be susceptible, and don't be so susceptible to these sort of emotions and feelings. And just know for certain that the devils are going to come and attack your feelings on purpose, just because they're able to do those sort of things. What's the word? I'll just say as a brother and sister. It's like when you know that the guy that your sister is talking to is just clearly playing them, and it's like, what are you doing? This individual is just playing you, and then next thing you know, when the relationship is finally over and done with, what ends up happening? He was playing you. It's the same exact principle and premise, And you're just watching on the sidelines like, wow, I told you so. But the sad thing about it is when you actually do tell these individuals that the devils are playing them, these individuals are already in the lake of fire by the time they find out that they were being played. And, this is a very serious, situation, and very serious. It's for real, You can't afford to make these sort of mistakes when it comes to your soul. I mean, it's sad. You wish you could have a second chance with these sort of situations and scenarios, but many individuals are not going to get it just because it has second chance after second chance after second chance. And, because it didn't want to accept that it was another second chance because it didn't come in the same form that I just mentioned or spoke on right now, they're expecting another second chance, quote unquote, when in reality, they've just been blowing it chance after chance. And yeah, so losing more spirits of virtues and graces and blessings to be able to tame your emotions, that we actually are able to tame your tongue also, kind of goes hand in hand, but not really, The emotion side of things, you can actually be mature and just negate it and ignore it completely and then not even bother saying anything. And taming your tongue, That's a lot. In all honesty, you need to be able to understand individuals, know that what you actually are going to say could, or for certain that it's going to piss them off, and so you need to say it in the nicest way possible. Have you ever seen the dog whisperer or the horse whisperer or whatever? You need to become those types of individuals where you know how to calm the dogs down, and you need to be able to get them nice and tranquil and at peace with themselves. That's basically you guys when you actually begin talking to other human beings. And yeah, I mean, it's basically that simple. To be able to understand, but there needs to be some level of understanding on your end concerning individuals psychologically. It's pretty simple and basic to be able to know the individuals, how they typically get when they actually attempt to program other people because they don't want you interfering with their turf or their kingdom of darkness and other things like that. But for the most part, everybody has common ground on things. People just don't like tromos, but they're fighting fire with fire. You need to fight love with hate, or hate with love. Oh wow, I said that reverse. You need to be able to be the bigger person and fight hate with love, or you're gonna go straight into a lake of fire. It's not even a big deal, in all honesty. You're more concerned about what individuals are going to say about you. Actually treating these sort of individuals with respect, politely. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to please Christ and do these things in a manner that glorify God and glorify Christ, and not care about what other individuals are going to say. Pride is going to get in the way of your obedience, your discipleship with Christ every single time, and that's going to be the main reason why you consistently and always fall flat on your face. You're calling out to God, and you don't even realize or aren't able to discern what your main problem actually is. And when these sort of tests and trials that come inside of your life that are meant to benefit you, you're not actually able to deny yourself or to be able to recognize that you're proud. Oh man, I'm sorry. But that's just a real issue, and that's just the problem of it all. You're just a proud individual and super proud. You're super pride. You're proud man, or that'd be a superhero, and that'd be you. That's your superpower. You're that proud. You can't stop being proud. You're just a proud individual, and pride is your strength. Obviously, what's going to end up happening. You end up getting paid for all of your sins, and you reap what you sow. And so these things are not to be taken lightly, especially with pride. You want to be this super Christian, but you let pride get in the way, or you want to actually obey Christ and begin being this Christian and just a regular, normal, typical Christian, but you don't actually want to submit or yield yourselves to God and to His commandments. Pride is going to get in the way every single time. That's going to be the main reason why you're not actually able to be this worksman on the table, even though you have the desire and the drive inside of your vessel to be able to reach and attain that level of intimacy with Christ and knowledge, and to be able to recognize that there's no alternative with God whatsoever. But no, what ends up happening, you end up getting proud because in this current time, what's going on? You haven't fallen into pride. You're not even in pride. These situations where you actually have to obey Christ and other things like that is not even happening right now. So you have every means and every capability to be able to prepare yourselves for these sort of, scenarios if they do come up, which they will. And now you're actually able to discern and just ponder and meditate, like, man, what's the most appropriate way to be able to, address these sort of situations? Because I could assure you that you're going to do 10 times better if you actually do something to prepare for these sort of situations, instead of you just going into it blindly thinking that because you've been reading all these scriptures themselves, all of a sudden you're going to ace the test when these situations actually come. How stupid does that sound from the outside looking in? It sounds ridiculous. And then individuals still continue living that whole philosophy out. But don't be discouraged. I've been there also. It wasn't until I was realistically really saturated in wisdom and wise sayings that I was actually able to not fall into temptation, and to just realistically really recognize that I don't know how to do wrong at this point anymore, because I've just been in the Word for such a long time. I don't know how to be petty because all I've been reading is, wisdom and how to not be petty. And, pettiness isn't even in my vocabulary because I'm just thinking about doing good things to another individual, wishing the best for, my enemies and individuals who absolutely despise and hate me, regardless of the situation, regardless of how evil and mean and these individuals could be to me. It's not even a thing that I'm even able to really think to myself that I should deviate myself from this path or from that virtue or something like that. It's just something that I genuinely have in my heart, that desire to actually see you actually uh, get the best that you possibly can get. And that's, it's sad, it's kind of rare, but because individuals are so ignorant how to be able to get to that point and how good it actually is, they're just ignorant. It's no big deal. It's not a problem as people typically think that it is a problem. It's just because you actually have been dealing with these sort of situations and you don't know how to react to them that it is a problem. Same situation, I've been there also. And how stupid, how salty did I feel? That was the real reason as to why I wasn't realistically able to react appropriately to these sort of situations that everybody always gets into. It's just, that's the only reason why. I just didn't know what to do, and I just resorted to old means and tactics that I was doing when I was a little kid. And it's like, man, it's just the same old, if my sister pinches me, I gotta pinch her back, or if my sister hits me, I gotta hit her back, or if my brother hits me, I gotta punch him back, and I gotta do other things like that. It's the same as like premise, which individuals aren't actually able to discern. To them, it's just like, well, whatever, I've been like this all of my life, and how am I supposed to quit? It's not a sin. It is a sin. You need to cut it out immediately, or you will end up losing your souls and end up losing your lives. So yeah, again, the deliverance side of these sort of videos. I'm gonna break all these curses up because these are like seals. None of these doves are going to leave without any of these curses broken up. Yeah, they should be leaving out of your vessel, out of your emotions, your will, your heart, your soul, your mind, and especially your mind, right? Because that's where all these voices are coming inside of your head that are causing you to think that you're thinking correct and appropriate responses and sentences. No, I'm casting them out by the legion in a strategic manner. That way you're actually able to discern and recognize that these sort of things are actually helping you out. That way you're encouraged to do these sort of works for yourself and for others. And I'm losing, more graces in by the legion. Virtues and blessings inside of your mind, your heart, your soul, your will, and your emotions, just whatever, anything and everything that you just want. Maybe you just want some peace and clarity in your mind. That's understandable. So I'm losing those sort of, types of coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms that will get you that peace and clarity for your lives. Because it just doesn't happen as you losing peace in your vessel. There has to be some sort of, knowledge on your end to be able to, recognize and think rationally and logically, or it won't happen. Or it could. Miracles happen all the time, right? guys are going to have to engage in spiritual warfare to actually be able to help your brothers and sisters in Christ out. That way they're not so susceptible and affected by these sort of demonic temptations that are mentioned in the churches and outside of churches, because that isn't sure what is actually going on and happening. It's all organized. From, the least to the greatest of sins, all of it has some sort of organization, and the devil is just constantly watching his eyes. What is it? He constantly has his eye on these sort of things. I don't know why I'm all over the place in this video. Sorry, but the devil definitely has his eye on the greatest of all sins and the tiniest of all sins, because he's able to inflict harm and damage to the human soul. Yeah, he's that evil. But you can stop him. You have every heavenly resource on your side to be able to stop him. You just need to be able to be confident and bold in those sort of things. The bolder you are, the more results you're going to see. You're going to end up seeing as well. Don't worry, I'm just losing more virtues and graces in your mind to be able to engage and fight these spiritual battles, or you never will, or you never will, or you never will. So yeah, I spoke on these little churches, how evil they actually are, how it's all just organized, and yeah, they try to get you to fall for their false doctrines through, encouragement of believing these false doctrines of other individuals, as well as trying to get you to be enticed and to try to get those sort of emotions and experiences of joy and satisfaction that you actually believe in something that's correct. Very sneaky and very dirty, I would say. Now you can prepare for it and avoid it entirely. And yeah, the work's on the table. You still need to be etching that perfect 5-pointed star, slate after slate every single time. Thank you. Love you. Bye.